You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Do you ever have a kiddo pop into your office last minute and you need an activity to do quickly? Or do you ever wish you had access to hundreds of school counseling resources at your fingertips? Well, my Impact School Counselor membership is for you. Inside Impact, you get access to hundreds of resources sorted by topic, tier, season, or monthly lesson plans. Simply log on, find what you need, download it, and use it with your students right away. You also get access to our community where you can meet like-minded school counselors to troubleshoot tough cases, get inspired, and collaborate with your colleagues. Not only that, we also know how important it is to stay on top of your professional development. That's why we offer live quarterly trainings on hot topics that you need most. Impact is designed to make your counseling life easier. I know you're super busy. That's why I've made it super simple to access everything you need in one place. This way you can spend your time and energy doing what you love the most, helping kiddos. If you're looking for a one-stop shop for all of your counseling needs so you don't have to worry about searching on different sites, paying for things here and there, you can find everything you need on demand in one place in Impact. Head over to stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact to watch a sneak peek video behind the scenes of what all is included in the membership. Again, that's stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact to get started today. I can't wait to help you make an impact. Thanks for listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified. Today I have a special guest on. I interview Janine Halloran. She is a licensed mental health counselor and former school counselor, just like you. Now she specializes in helping students with coping skills. She's also the author of Coping Skills for Kids, and today we chat all about how to help students learn coping skills to use in the school setting and at home as well. I think you're going to love this episode with Janine, and let's dive in. Hi, Janine. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am excited to interview you today. I love having a mix of like solo episodes and guests on the podcast, but the guest episodes are fun because I always learn something, the listeners learn something, and I don't have to prepare as much.
I completely agree. Same with my podcast. I much prefer the interviews.
Okay. Oh, I didn't realize you had a podcast as well.
Yep.
Oh.
It's Calm and Connected. So yeah, it's kind of fun. I get to talk about coping skills and social skills and self-care. And I get to talk to different people from different areas. So that's my favorite part.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, those are some of our favorite topics around here too. So before we get started, or as we get started, just tell us a little bit about who you are and your background and education to this point.
Oh, sure. So I'm a licensed mental health counselor in Massachusetts. So I've worked with children, teens, and their families for over 20 years now. It's just, I crossed that threshold. I can't believe it.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I did a lot of work earlier in my career in school settings. So I did, substantially separate, a separate classroom within a typical building, and then working as a school counselor in a typical 7th and 8th grade building, and then a 4th and 5th grade school. And then I've continued to, as you do, as you're a counselor, sometimes you have other jobs. And so I was also working as a social skills group leader. I did that for a while. And then when I had my own kids, as they got older, I needed to be more present with them. So I sort of moved away from schools, went into more of a private practice. So now I actually see kids in private practice, but they're all kids in school. So
Got it. Amazing. So do you have an office, or is it a home office, or how does that work?
So I actually go to their homes, which I know feels a little bit it's fun, actually.
Yeah.
It's something I used to do earlier in my career, and then like sort of circling back to it now is very interesting. I love seeing kids in their home.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's their element, and then it's kind of like doing a home visit at the same time as the session, which is great.
Yes, and you get to see, I'm talking with them about like, oh, what are your strategies? What are your coping skills? Let's look at your calm space. Let's set up your bedroom in a way that makes sense so that you can get yourself calm and ready for bed. And you can, show me the dog, all the things. Like they get really connected really quickly when you meet in their home.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that had some cool perspective. And you said that you did a social skills group as like a side thing. What was that like? Was that a private thing or part of the school?
So that was actually private. So it was actually run by a former school counselor as well. And she had created an entire sort of after school activity, social skills, really building things for kids with autism, kids on the with kids with ADHD, kids who are just having a hard time connecting with friends. So it was more about like teaching them social skills and how to interact with one another, and then giving them opportunities to do that. So we had like Pokemon Club, we had Lego Club, we had Minecraft. It was really fun.
Oh,
It was
fun.
really fun. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, it sounds like you're bringing a bunch of different experiences to the table here. I love it. But this home visit or seeing the kids in their home, that's great. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
So most of our listeners are current school counselors, and I know you're a former school counselor. So what did you just love about the school counseling profession, or do you still love about the school counseling profession?
What I love about it is every day is different. You walk in and you never know what is going to happen. You never know what you're going to be handed. And you know what? I learn so much from kids, and it's so intriguing to talk to them and hear about what works for them, what doesn't work for them, how we can support them. I loved working with the kids. That was like my favorite thing. Lunch group. I did so many lunch groups.
Yep. Yep.
Oh my gosh, right? And
On the podcast says the same thing. Like every day is different and love working with the kids. I think that's what we all have in common.
yeah, well, and when I worked in that fourth and fifth grade school, I'd have 4 lunches. We had 4 lunches. So kids would always be like, "Are you eating again?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yes, I am." And I would bring a lunch that had like 4 little things, so I would be able to eat like something with everybody.
Main, your dessert. That's great. That's fun. But then, as we all know, some things can be really frustrating about counseling in the school setting, limitations or things like that. What did you find frustrating?
For me, I actually found the thing that was most frustrating was doing jobs outside of my area of expertise, right? So, I don't mind honestly pitching in and helping out around the school, doing like bus duty. Like that's fine. I'm part of the community, right? But
Mhm.
like if I'm in charge of like say testing, or if I'm in charge of like IEPs that are not related to social at all
Right.
or related to emotional stuff, I was always like, I'm not quite sure if this is the best use of my time. And I would give that feedback to my principal and say, I appreciate this, but it takes the time away from me being in the classroom with kids, being
Right.
on crisis management, being available to families if they need to talk about stuff, if I'm doing these other things with my job. And so, especially my last principal was very open to that, and really it was recognizing like what is her job as a school counselor versus what is she allowed to do, or what is she being told to do.
Right.
or
No, I love that. Yeah, it's like my personal mission to empower counselors to have those conversations. Because everyone, even your, principal who's assigning you these duties, they want you to be doing the direct student services. Like that's why you're there. That's where the need is. But sometimes I'm sure they feel overwhelmed, like, oh, we have all this stuff that needs to get done. Who could do this? Who's flexible? And then you're just like, hey, wait a minute. That's fine. But then I'm not doing my class lessons, my small groups, my individual counseling, or just like you said, being available for families. Like if someone's like, hey, can we come in and have a chat about my child? And you're like, oh, actually, no, I have no space available.
right, like I don't have time, and that feels really bad to say to a parent, like, oh, your child is in crisis. Okay, well,
Yeah.
you just have to wait because now I have to go and cover like lunch duty for a teacher. You know
Right.
what I mean? It just feels really awkward.
Right. Agreed. Well, good on you for having those conversations. And to listeners, just have the conversation. It might be something like I said, I'm sure your administrator has the right intentions, but maybe they're just kind of losing sight of that. Amazing. Okay. Well, now you are like a coping skills, social skills expert. So we want to talk to you about this. And more specifically about coping skills in the school setting, because we know they can look different, right? So if we have students who are struggling at school, what are your favorite like school-based coping skills that you recommend?
Oh my gosh. So I often find for kids in the school setting, a lot of times they, especially as they get older, they want to have coping skills that nobody knows that they're doing, right? I call them the invisible coping skills. They don't want anybody to know. My kindergartners and first graders don't care if somebody sees them doing like volcano breathing or whatever. But my fourth and fifth graders really do care. Like they don't want that, right? They want to be able to do something that is invisible, things that people don't see. So I actually really love talking about using their imagination. So if they are feeling stressed out or feeling worried, imagining your favorite place. What's your favorite place to be? And really going there in terms of your senses. Like, what does it smell like? What does it feel like? What things do you taste when you're there? Is it warm or cold? Really painting a picture with their senses, so they really go to that place to help them take this mini vacation in as they're sitting there in their desk, right? They're just sitting, and then helping them get to a calmer spot. So I love doing that and helping them come up with like breathing techniques that aren't needing to have like extra props. So, thinking about like smell the soup and cool the soup, or smell the hot cocoa, cool the hot cocoa. Or even just doing tracing like a star on their desk with their finger and breathing in and out as they go up and down the sides of the star, just to give them some things to do that aren't super noticeable, that everybody else is going to be like, oh, she's totally using a coping skill, or what are you doing? You look so weird. But helping them relax their bodies.
Yes. No, I love that, because of course at that age, you don't want to be different, right? You're trying to fit in. You don't want to be like the weird one doing the coping skill. And I also love that both the examples you recommended are in the classroom, right? Like they're not having to leave and go to a special place. I kind of want to pick your brain on that, because I feel like calm down corners and having like a special designated place to calm down and use coping skills is popular, and it is effective. I mean, I have had one in my office and sometimes in classrooms, but then also there's a piece to it, like the kid's supposed to stay in the classroom. We're trying to get them to stay in a learning environment. So what do you recommend in terms of like when to leave, or how to know when it's a good situation to leave?
So absolutely. I love the rise of using calm down spaces, calm corners in the classroom, because it makes it so much easier for a kid to reintegrate back into the work that they're doing, right? It was always my job as a school counselor to get kids calm and go back to class as quickly as possible. Like we're not chatting here. Like, I'm not your individual counselor. We're not going to go into all the deets. Like, you need to go back to class.
Yeah.
So I love that they are using calm down spaces in the classroom to help with that. I think, once if there's an issue that a child is having and it's becoming disruptive in the classroom, like their voice is getting raised and it's not being able to be controlled and it's distracting and disruptive to the classroom, that's when you have to make that judgment call of saying, okay, it's time to go. Now, you also have to have the staffing to be able to help that, or like the way to communicate that to people.
Right.
And there's lots of different ways that schools handle that in different ways. But I love to, as much as possible, normalize the fact that you're going to have feelings during the day and use a space in the classroom to hopefully manage those feelings in a safe and healthy way, and then return to the class. And, being able to have like extra sets of eyes helps, but sometimes we don't always have that. But to be able to do that pre-work with the kids, that front loading of let's practice what it looks like getting into the calm down space. When do you use it? When do you leave? Like, like all those different elements.
Yes. And I do find I like the calm down spaces in the classrooms, because it's cool. The other kids are just so gracious, with the students who need them. And it almost gives the other kids permission. Like, everyone has a hard time sometimes, it like normalizes the fact that we need to use calm down corners. They can see their peers going to the calm down corner.
Yes, absolutely. I love that you always have the stigma of like, oh, that's that kid.
Right.
And with the calm down corner, it's not just for that kid, it's for everybody. So
right.
Everybody, like, you know what? Sometimes teachers can take a little space in the calm down space.
Yeah, definitely. Now let's talk about teaching social skills. So like explicitly teaching these skills. What do you recommend for school counselors? Do you recommend at the class lesson level, in small groups, individual, I'm assuming they're all doing combination of all. What are your recommendations there?
I love groups personally. And especially if kids are struggling, I love small groups because it's easier to then help them walk through where things go wrong and to support them when things go well, if you have a small group. So I love using games and activities and being really explicit about it. So, talking beforehand, like today we are talking about listening. What does listening mean? Let's go through it and understand it. And then let's play a game where we are focusing on listening. And then so we do it, and you can check in with them as they're doing it, like that's working really well. I see that that's going really well over there with that pair of people and that pair of people. And then afterwards, doing a check-in with them, sort of debriefing, like how did that feel for you? Where was it hard to listen? Where was it easy to listen? That kind of thing. So I love the actual experiential, real life setup of using games and activities to practice the social skills, because one-on-one can be really helpful, but really the rubber meets the road when you're actually interacting. And so that's where you're going to have those bumps and need a little bit more scaffolding to make sure that they're doing what they need to be doing and redirecting in a nice way about, oh gosh, do you notice what's happening with their face? I don't think they really liked that right now. So maybe we could try saying it in a different way.
Right. I love that. Yeah, I agree. I love a group because for one, you have a limited time and you're able to see multiple kids in the same 30 minutes instead of 5 different, 30 minutes, and practicing the skills. So it's not just theoretical, like, oh, no, when you're in this situation, you'll do this. They're like actually practicing. So I just love that. And I even find that groups of other topics, like let's say they're in there for self-regulation or anger management or something, they're practicing social skills as well. The social skills are kind of like a theme throughout the groups, just by interacting with each other.
Oh, absolutely. And one thing I actually say to educators a lot when I do talking about social skills, and I say, you teach social skills all day long, even if you don't know it.
Yes.
Like you don't pay attention to it, but you do. You set your classroom standards. They know that they need to raise their hand. They know how they need to walk in line. They know what the expectations are in terms of reading the board, reading the room, all that stuff. You teach social all day long. Just do it as part of the curriculum as setting up a classroom.
Right. Absolutely. Now, we talked about teaching coping skills in schools, right? And how we can help students deal with their emotions in the school setting. Now, what about outside of school? But I know you're seeing some students outside of school in their homes. So for our counselors who are only seeing the students in school, but they're trying to equip them for when they're not with them, when they are outside of school, what do you recommend?
I really want to make the bridge between home and school pretty strong. So if I'm seeing a kid and we're talking about a particular strategy that we're trying, I want to make sure that the families know what we tried and to give it a try at home as well. And I'd love, I love running coping skills groups as well. So we're practicing a different coping skill. We're trying different strategies. We're learning about what works and what doesn't work for us at school. But then to be able to also communicate that to the families and have them do some thinking about what works and doesn't work at home, and hearing back from them also about what strategies are working for this particular child or this particular group of children at home. Because what works in one place may not work in another. So it's good to have a lot of different strategies because you'll need to use them in different places.
Do you have any tips for getting parents on board?
So, one of the things that I always say, I've worked in school districts where parents were very involved, and I've worked in school districts where parents were not involved at all. And I always try and keep my door open. So I send letters, I send emails, I reach out and call, and I try to also, when something is going well, I love making those phone calls.
Yes.
It's the best feeling. And I have these very vivid memories of being a school counselor and noticing something that was incredible and a great point for a kid. Like, oh, I see that his social skills have gotten so much better. Like his conversation is so much more on point and all that stuff. And I remember calling parents and just saying, hey, I just wanted to give you a compliment and let you know that I'm seeing some really cool things. It felt so good, and they felt so good. They were like, oh my gosh, you noticed we were working on this over the summer, and I think it's really paying off. So I always love to do like the positive call home, the positive feedback, because it's so easy to fall into the trap of there's another issue and we just need to have a conversation about that. But if we can also sort of lay the groundwork for, there's some good stuff happening too, and I want to share it with you.
Right. Oh, that's such a good reminder, because I do feel it, especially for parents of students who, maybe they like are on the spectrum or have attention difficulties. They're already used to having a lot of meetings. The school calls a lot, some parents are like never at the school and some are always up there for something, and a lot of times it is for something kind of negative or, something we're going to work on. So how fun is that to get like that positive call? And especially if they've been practicing at home, that's so affirming.
Yes, absolutely. I love the positive call home it's like one of my favorite things to do.
Yes, I love that. Okay, last question for you. So what advice would you give to a brand new school counselor?
Oh my goodness. I would say, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. I know it's really scary when you go into a school, right? And I would say, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself with your principal if you feel like you are being asked to do things that are really outside the purview of a school counselor's job. And that's okay. Like, you can do that with kindness and respect, but just set the groundwork. Like, this is what I really want to focus on. How can we make this happen? Mm-hmm. The second thing I would say is make friends with the secretary and the custodial staff.
Yes.
They run the school. They be clear about that they run the school. So
that's such a good tip. Secretary for sure. Oh my gosh. They know everything that's going on because they're that first set of eyes. Like, they see everything. And then the custodial staff, I love that you mentioned that as well. I was actually talking to some of my impact members on our call yesterday about building a crisis response team at your school and how you don't want to overlook key people like this who know every student, who are in those common areas. I had a custodian, his name was Art. He was fabulous. And he was on our team and the kids loved him and he would help like de-escalate, and amazing.
Yes. And the thing is, like, they are the backbone of the school and they know everything. And as the school counselor, sometimes I would do some questionable things in my room. Like, there would be like pudding on the floor because I'm having lunch group in there. And right. So I also didn't want to you want to make friends with them because they're going to be cleaning up your nonsense.
Yep. Like, they're like, oh, cool. They did the angry volcano again. There's like explosion stuff everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Glitter calm down bottles are a little messy as well.
Yes, exactly. And so I'd always be like, here are some cookies. I'm so sorry.
I love that. That's awesome. Well, this has been great, Janine. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. Tell us about where counselors can connect with you if they want to learn more about what you offer and if they have any questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So people can find me over at copingskillsforkids.com. And so there I have a lot of free resources, but then I've also written some books and activity books. I even started a resource library that is expanding every month. So I add new coping skills in there all the time. I'm talking with other experts and having them come in and share wisdom about different strategies that might be helpful for kids. So I love to be able to continue to build that catalog of coping skills for kids so that every kid can figure out what they need to do in order to help manage their emotions in a safe and healthy way.
I love that. Yes. And your podcast. We know we have listeners of podcasts here because they're listening to this one. So where can they find yours?
Oh yeah, over at JanineHalloran.com. So that lives over on my name site. Calm and Connected every other week. We do individual. I'll do solo episodes, but then I also get a chance to interview some really fun people. So
amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been great.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.